Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast for August 17th, 2014. This is episode 78. I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
And I'm Michael Denniston.
Thanks for joining us this week, everyone, and thanks, Michael, for coming back. For those out there that listen to our latest extra film podcast, you're going to recognize these voices as it's the same cast and crew from that episode. Thanks, Michael, for joining us once again, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
The same three amigos.
Absolutely. And Brendan, thanks for filling in for Blake once again this week, man. Again, last minute decision, and I appreciate you being here and being willing.
And when I say willing, I mean I haven't even watched The Giver, so I can't review the movie with you guys.
No, that's okay. But the rest of the show, you'll be available and willing to participate.
I am more than likely.
So look forward to that. But speaking of The Giver, that is what we are going to be reviewing on this week's show. And our top three this week is not going to be a theme going off of that. We're actually going to be talking about Robin Williams once again, and we're going to look back at our favorite moments from him with our top three Robin Williams scenes or moments in film. And then, as usual, we're going to discuss the movies we've seen over the last week. But before we get into any of that, fellas, how was your week?
Mine was pretty good. I've been to the theater, I think, 7 times in the last week.
It's a lot of movie watching.
And a lot of bad movie watching, too. I did get to see Boyhood, so that is the only thing I've seen this week in theaters that I've enjoyed. So, but, you know, anytime you get the opportunity to go to the movies,
sure.
it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Boyhood is pretty much far and away the best thing out right now.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. This is what happens when you get towards the end of the summer, and then all the remaining crap that they want to compete with that was actually good starts coming out.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's unfortunately what's happening. But yeah, week's going okay. Just had a nice chill weekend, basically dating Netflix for most of it.
Nice.
How about you, JD?
My week's going pretty good, too. Very busy. As I mentioned, we did record our extra film this week on A Most Wanted Man, which was a film that we did see this last week, and one that I enjoyed. Not as good as Boyhood, but still up there for me. I also watched Boyhood this week twice, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I got to see it a second time so we can talk about for extra film this coming time.
I had to watch it a second time to get ready for that show.
I really think it's necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was looking for you all because Guardians of the Galaxy came out, was this 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And in Lexington, that's the same night we got A Most Wanted Man. And me and a buddy, we were like the only ones who showed up for like first showing of Most Wanted Man. We were so pumped, and nobody else came. Everybody else was watching the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Not surprising at all, but
yeah,
it is a little heartbreaking though because Philip Seymour Hoffman is incredible in that film.
Sure,
so.
Yeah.
Work also was very good this week, and we finally got our students back. I work at a small university here in Kentucky, so work all of a sudden got crazy busy. And because I was in Chicago last weekend, it was a short week for me since I didn't work on Monday. So between the podcast and all these movies that we've been watching and kids growing up, I feel like I've hardly had 3 seconds to think about anything. But fortunately, on Saturday of this last weekend, I got to just chill for like 3 hours in the afternoon. I felt like it was the first time in forever.
Perfect me time,
exactly.
basically.
So it was really good. But one thing I got to do, maybe you guys can help me afterwards, is DJ Valentine from the Simplistic Reviews podcast challenged me to that ice bucket challenge thing. So screw you, DJ, for doing that. And secondly, I got to do that soon. So,
I say just whip out a checkbook and write it out to your ALS.
Just write the check.
That's if I get nominated, that's all I'm doing. I mean, it's like
it is good charity stuff. Very good.
It really is, yeah. And it's raising good awareness. So, I mean, there are some good things about it.
All right, let's talk about The Giver. Let's get into it.
And here we go.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 78. Brendan, there's nothing I can say that is going to prepare you for what is about to happen.
JD, calm down. We're just playing a movie clip here.
Jonas, what do you and the receiver actually do?
My rules say I'm not allowed to share.
She is the chief elder.
You're right. We sit in chairs and don't talk all day long. And then when time is up, I come back here. I apologize, but I'm late.
Your apology is accepted.
He's not usually like this.
I'm surprised you're not more worried about him. Were he my responsibility, I would be.
All right, The Giver is directed by Philip Noyce and stars Brenton Thwaites, Jeff Bridges, Meryl Streep, and a bunch of other people. As you mentioned, Brendan, you didn't get a chance to see this because we're throwing in here last second, so thanks for being here.
Sure.
So this discussion is going to be held down by Michael and I. So Michael, I'll throw it to you first. You're a big fan of the book. You're the only one of the two of us that has also read it, so this conversation could be pretty interesting. So as a fan of the book, what did you think about the movie, The Giver?
Well, as a fan of the book, the best thing about this movie that they do really well is they establish very early on that this movie sucks. So if you don't care to walk out of the theater, or it's on TNT one day, which hopefully I think TNT will have better taste. They'll probably be like, the fourth and the Bourne series will be on for like 24 straight hours. No Giver. It starts with a really terrible voiceover that explains very unnecessarily who these characters are. You could establish pretty quickly these are teenage friends, which as a fan of the book, they're also aged up. They're not turning 12. They're now turning 16, I believe. And they're going to be friends forever, I think is one of the lines.
Friends forever, yep.
I think that's one of the...
Say that a couple times. So
that's a chant that these little brainwashed children say to each other. And you really... Well, I'm not going to speak for you just yet, but I really dislike these characters. And reading the book... I am reading about children, like coming of age. When you put the same premise with older children, it's not just the fact that they've changed the age, which I'm not going to be one of those people that's a stickler for it to be just like the book, but it really changes the tone because you start to look at these kids like they're little monsters, like that they're too old to be acting in such a way.
Sure.
Whereas it makes more sense when they're 11 going on 12 than it does going on 16 and to see them be robots. So when Jonas, the main character who will become the receiver of memories here, which if you've not seen the movie or read the book, this is probably all going to sound very strange.
Well, go ahead and set that up a little bit.
Well, okay, the Giver, the title character here, is basically the only person in this community that has any memory of how the world was before. This world is black and white, like literally... Everyone sees everything in black and white. There's no color. And the kids they're heavily medicated. They take in the book it's a pill, but in this it's an injection as they walk out their front door. Their parents are not their biological parents. They are...
it's a really weird world.
It is very strange. I think it's probably, unfortunately for the Giver, it looks like it's... I'm going to borrow a line from Fight Club here, like a copy of a copy of a copy, because we've had the Hunger Games, we've had Divergent. We're kind of accustomed, even having not read any of those novels, to a world where teenagers are under the thumb of this government that controls every aspect of their lives.
It very much feels like a been there, done that kind of thing.
Which is unfortunate for the book. I think it was published in 93. But the parents, not their actual parents, they sign up to have a child. This government allows them to have kids, and they're only allowed to have one son, one daughter. It's not a very loving environment, and this is the one part of the film I really enjoyed. They established that by having Katie Holmes as the mother. So you instantly know your mom doesn't love you, and she's very strange and very wooden too. Gives a very Katie Holmes performance. I don't know what happened to Joey. I used to love Joey back on Dawson's Creek, and she died, and so did my heart.
She's still good looking. I guess that's all she has.
Yeah. But the Giver is the one who knows how the world was. It had color. There were differences. There was emotion. There was love. There was families. And poor Jonas, who is our main young adult here, is chosen by his society to become the receiver of memory, which in turn means he will one day become the giver. He will keep all the memories for
Who is
him.
the only person in this society that can do that.
And the giver is played by Jeff Bridges, and he does an adequate job, I think, with what he has to work with, because it's a very Jeff Bridges performance. He's got like a cool voice, and he's got great interactions with Jonas. But you did a poll earlier.
Yes.
About him
We'll
versus...
talk about it here in a little bit, yeah.
Him versus Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
Meryl Streep, not so good in this.
She doesn't have a whole lot to do there
Pretty
either.
thankless role, and also a role that in the book was not really there. They really tried to amp her up as the villain of the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, the villain was just what we had allowed society to become.
So she kind of represents that.
She
then.
personifies that now in a very movie-like fashion. Like you have to like beat her. I've talked way too much because I really, in the theater, didn't even give it that much thought because I was just like, I'd already drank my beer and I just wanted another. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, the one thing I wanted to bring up, I guess, and just kind of ask you about, and we kind of talked about the black and white cinematography, which does kind of give it this kind of cold and suppressed kind of bland feel, as they, you mentioned they took away the color, they took away all these emotions. They want everyone to kind of look different. It's not about being unique or being special or anything like that. One thing that I didn't get, I don't know if they explained this in the book or if this was intentional. This was something I guess I wanted to ask you about, but they don't really set up where this world comes from. It's just there. It looks like they're in the sky somewhere, like they had built something that is separated from the ground. None of that is explained or where this is going or anything like that. Is that in the book? Was that intentional? Because I feel like they just introduce us to this world and to these characters, and I have no idea the context behind it.
Well, that issue is going to be the same because it's something that has happened so far back that nobody even remembers. Even the giver himself is like, there was someone before me, before him, before that guy. But I do think the movie version makes it something the audience has to wonder about, and it's a question they're never going to answer because they add all this futuristic kind of setting to it.
Okay.
Which, like I said, in the book, they take a pill. They don't have the little injections, and they do have a voice that will like reprimand them, that will come over like speakers and stuff. But they add these weird details. Like for one, Asher is the best friend character.
Yeah.
And in the book, his job he's given is, because he's kind of a goofball, he is given, like, he's in charge of recreation for small children. And it's like, okay, so he gets to be in charge of make sure they play adequately and are safe and all that. In this version, the movie, he becomes like a fighter pilot. Like he controls like a drone. No sense. And so you've got these weird moments where the teenagers are hanging out like on this weird like incline that kind of goes to nowhere. Like it's just keep in mind this is just a town, and they've got this weird thing that just in the movie makes no sense. Why are they up that high just to walk back down the escalator? Like
I don't like they have this like giant archway of stairs, but they live in a world where technology is obviously advanced. Why would they have that?
Where are you going? You just live in that small town. Why do you need this?
Yeah, exactly.
There's all sorts of little details. The movie tries to, they try to make it more sci-fi. What really came to mind when I was reading the book was Pleasantville, the movie from 98, is a better adaptation of The Giver than The Giver. Because it's more comedic, obviously, but it's set in a small town where there's like rules, and it's just been indoctrinating these kids that you don't lie, you do what you're told, you don't think for yourself. That's how it was in Pleasantville, and the way that they like show color in Pleasantville was much better than the way they do in this. Like in this, it's all tied to the fact that he has a crush on a girl. Like that's and in the book that's not so. He starts to see it before he even develops feelings for the opposite sex.
He is 16 after all.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the stirrings. The stirrings. I wish this had been the title for the movie. Like the stirrings are coming to get you, because as soon as the hormones kick in, all of this goes to hell.
Sounds like the body snatchers.
Pretty much.
The stirrings are coming to get you.
Well, another question I guess that I wanted to ask you is, and I felt like there was a lot of plot holes in this, but perhaps this was intentional. And I don't know if this is in the book or not, but when I'm watching the movie, they're talking about setting up the society where it's completely void of emotion. We're going to be as bland as possible to try to keep everyone safe. But at the same time, I feel like we experience a lot of emotion throughout the film from a lot of other characters besides Jonas. You see a lot of anxiety and fear and worry from all the other characters. Is that not emotion to these people? Like, that to me was very confusing and very ambiguous. It was like the only emotion they were trying to keep from people was love and anger. And maybe that's intentional, I don't know, but as I'm watching it, it was very distracting to me because I'm sitting here pondering these questions, wondering if that was intentional or not of the movie. And so to me, that completely took me out because I feel like they're setting up the society and then breaking all the rules just because of this love story that they want to tell.
Okay, yeah, that aspect is totally with the film. Now, in the book, they reference the fact that they break rules all the time. That is acceptable under like certain circumstances, like on a holiday that they sanction. You're allowed to no longer put your bike in the bike port. You can just throw it on the ground. The kids can play freely. I think the issue with trying to film this is you're really going to be in like a Stepford Wives situation with the actors. You don't cast Meryl Streep and then tell her not to emote in some way. And that's the issue, is that for her to
you hire Megan Fox to do that.
That would have been great. Just have her all over. She could have been like a Peter Sellers thing. Have her play every part.
Exactly.
Yeah, Meryl Streep is very problematic in this film because you're right. She displays emotions the entire time, and yet she's prophesizing that we have to get rid of emotion. It's terrible,
and then she does it the entire time.
Yes. Yeah. Part of that with the book is it's truly told from Jonas's point of view. And the movie tries to spread it out with the love interest with Fiona. She becomes more prominent. Asher displays emotion for some reason in a very key scene. Like he gets angry with Jonas, and you don't know why.
Completely out of nowhere,
The movie's bad. It's just bad, and I don't think it's very well thought out.
Well, the one thing I guess that I was okay with that you kind of brought up was when they kind of bring back the use of color within the cinematography. I was okay with that because a lot of the film is from Jonas's perspective. And because he's starting to experience and see all of these new things, the color aspect to me made a lot of sense. So I was completely fine with that. In fact, there was one moment when they went back to Fiona's perspective slightly when she's like in this prison cell or whatever. It went back to the black and white cinematography. So I was perfectly okay with that. And I agree with you that a lot of this is muddled. A lot of it doesn't make sense. And even from someone that doesn't know the book or know what's going on, I felt like it was never very cohesive for me. But at the same time, there was one thing I did appreciate about this film. In essence, when I walked out, I wasn't like mad at this film. I was just kind of disappointed because they bring up a bunch of interesting themes that I really liked and I really appreciated, but they just never really explored to the kind of level I feel like this world could have explored. Because in essence, I do think that this movie is a celebration of life and emotion in a lot of ways, but coming with that is going to be death and destruction. So there's this obvious juxtaposition there, and they bring that up through these like flashbacks or these sequences where Jonas is basically receiving all of the memories. And I felt like those sequences were shot really well for the most part. I thought the score added some really great elements there. And I thought the acting was fantastic in those sequences, but they never really utilized that because it always went back to the stereotypical trope of the guy pursuing the girl kind of thing. It always went back to the romantic angle of it, which to me it was just a waste. Like they bring up these awesome themes and then never do anything with it.
It sounds like you'd really enjoyed the book then, and
probably
and you know, just to our listeners out there, like I said, I haven't read I haven't seen the movie, but I've read the book, so I will interject with a few questions and comments there. But JD, it sounds like you'd really like the book then, because that's exactly what the book does.
There's also a third act, like it's not a chase sequence. It's a little bit of a chase, but really it's a race against time aspect that just feels totally out of whack with like the tone of the piece that they're going for. This weird sci-fi. It's like Tom Cruise should be on like a motorcycle, like, you know, fighting to save the day, like if he can just get there in time. And it comes out of nowhere, and it's like they didn't really trust the material to stand on its own, and so they tinkered with it a little bit. We've not even gotten to the main point here, is that they cast Taylor Swift in like the most pivotal role for like the drama of the piece.
She's in the movie like 2 minutes.
But it's like,
Yeah.
Why did you cast Taylor Swift when everyone's like, hey, there's Taylor Swift? Because she's not in it enough for you to like, okay, she's doing a great job in this performance. It's just enough to be like, hey, there she is. And then
she was playing music.
Yeah, and it's just so distracting. Like I don't know. It's just the film was definitely, it was aimed at an audience that I think will not be satisfied with it. It's aimed at the fans of Divergent, Hunger Games.
Yeah,
and this is not going to be that interesting to them. And I'm not saying that like I'm insulting those fan bases. It's just this movie doesn't offer that much to them that's not already been covered in a more entertaining fashion. And I say that as a fan of the book. The book need to be handled, I don't know, with a little bit more. I don't mean this as a pun here. With kid gloves, it needed to be from a child's perspective. The teen romance, that's better served in the Hunger Games. It's better served in Divergent.
Like Ender's Game is from a 11, 12-year-old perspective. It works well, yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about was Brenton Thwaites' performance. I wanted to ask you about that. I thought he did an okay job. I thought it was serviceable. I don't think it's anything going to be hugely memorable, but this character is kind of a daydreamer of sorts. He has this sense of wonder about him, and I think Thwaites does that pretty well for the most part, especially with his like facial mannerisms and things like that. What did you think about him as the lead character?
No, I hated him.
Interesting.
I thought he had one emotion, which was that he was, whether it was happy or sad, he was almost always on the verge of tears. And I didn't think that. Well, obviously
he's in love now.
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's going to be great memories and bad memories, and they're going to provoke an emotional response, and probably an extreme one given his circumstances. He did not play it the way that I read the character, which was more of about someone like in the book.
But do you think that is a fault of the movie or a fault of your expectations because of reading the book?
I think it's a fault of the movie because the book is about, becoming an adult when you're a young man. It's about losing your childhood. And they say that officially in the film. Thank you for your childhood when they signed to Meryl.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it means more when you're talking about an actual child. We're talking about someone that, there's a flashback to war. He could be, serving in a war right now. He could be a man.
Sure.
Like you could cast this character up and he could be a college student or something.
Yeah.
It just doesn't play as well when it's like, okay, you're pretty much an adult now. Like it doesn't, the metaphor doesn't hit home for me if it's not a child.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. I guess for me, I think it worked okay for the most part because of where they were wanting to go with the character, especially with some of the emotional sequences as you alluded to, that we experienced later in the film. But that kind of young, like child or kind of young teen angst that I guess maybe they wanted to go for, that was there in the book. You definitely don't feel that in this movie at all.
No.
I definitely agree with you. I just kind of wish they would have stayed away from the young romantic angle. That was the thing that completely took me out. Because like I said, there's some really interesting stuff going on there. I think one of the more interesting stuff going on between Jonas is also his interactions with the Giver, which, as you mentioned, is played by Jeff Bridges. And I found that character to be layered, decently okay, at least for this movie. And I kind of love the emotion that is brought out of this character. There is the one moment with Taylor Swift, as you mentioned, despite that being a little bit distracting. I think it also was a pivotal moment for that character. And I did kind of sense that. I thought Jeff Bridges actually played it really, really well because this is a guy that is burdened with all of the anguish of history. And he's the only one in this society, or at least he's supposed to be. We kind of get a sense of that in Meryl Streep's character too. I don't know how she all of a sudden knows all these different things either. But because he is burdened with that, there is this really neat contrast of him having to deal with that, but he also has to deal with the positive sides of that, because with guilt and destruction and the pain that causes, there's also love and joy. And he knows that that's worth fighting for, and that's kind of what he tries to instill into Jonas a little bit. So when Jonas starts to fight, he is completely on board with that, and he's okay with that. Again, I don't think that was explored as thoroughly as they could have, but I think the way Bridges played it, it was appealing to me enough that I at least enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, I would agree. Jeff Bridges is he's perfectly fine. It's just that we needed less Meryl Streep. We didn't need the villain to always pop her head in whenever the Giver and the receiver were having a conversation. We didn't need her lurking in the background, and I think that kind of stripped some of the emotion out of it.
And in a lot of ways, her fear was more emotion than whatever Jonas experienced the film.
I had one final thought. I didn't like some of the sequences when he receives memories. I enjoyed, like, there's one, I guess the first one you get is on a ship, and you're seeing like a sunset. Gorgeous shot. And
amazing.
If that has to be your first like moment of seeing the world in color, I don't know if you can pick a better one.
Yeah.
However, towards the end of the film, they start to show, you know, other cultures, and it's like singing and dancing and like Christmas time. And I couldn't help but feel that I was watching an iPhone commercial as I was seeing these memories, as if Apple produced the memories of the world.
Maybe they did.
Maybe so. And, you know, they were Steve Jobs and all of them, they were way ahead of their time. But yeah, it felt like I was watching the next iPhone ad.
Sure.
And I don't think that's what they were going for.
Sure. Well, one thing I want to ask you, and this is mostly for people that have seen the film. I don't want to necessarily give spoilers away, but if you've seen the film, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. So there's this final sequence that happens at the very end of the film where Jonas is trying to save the day. And as that comes to fruition, there's something that kind of appears there in front of him. Do you think that was a literal translation, or do you think that was more metaphorical?
I think with the movie, it was literal. I don't give them any credit whatsoever.
You don't give them any credit?
No. I mean,
interesting. Okay.
That's a shame.
In the reading of the book, I took it a much different way, a much darker way. In the movie, I think.
I guess who knows?
Yeah.
I
think I even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I was going back and forth on this, and I really wanted it to be this metaphorical thing, but the way that it does play out, it wouldn't surprise me if it was this kind of literal translation. I mean, I don't know, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Anyway, any other final thoughts, and what grade would you give The Giver?
D minus. D? I don't know.
Very nice.
D because of Jeff Bridges. How about that?
Okay.
It's up.
I didn't completely hate this movie. I didn't think I was going to love it walking into it. The marketing definitely didn't sell me on it a whole lot. But as I kind of mentioned, I do think there's this interesting contrast of the human spirit and the realities that happen around us. You talk about the effects of joy, but also there's the arduous nature of tragedy. It's kind of the yin and yang of having and losing, if you will. So while this film isn't necessarily the worst thing I've seen all year, at the same time, it is a bit muddled. It is too undeveloped for it to be as potent as it could be. But as we've talked about, there's some really interesting and powerful themes that I think is provocative and even layered at times, especially with the Giver character, with Jonas to a degree. It just wasn't executed on a high level, which is disappointing to me because I think that those themes are interesting. I think the questions it raises is pretty fascinating. But those themes are mostly wasted for this romantic love angle that, you know, is happening in this dystopian society that we've seen over and over and over again. And that's pretty unfortunate, I would say. But
that's really the best society to pick up the ladies in if you're in a dystopian world.
Exactly.
That's where love really brews right there.
Yeah, but some of those scenes I felt were very powerful. I think they were very provocative, and I think the effects of them on some of those characters was really fascinating. I thought that was pretty riveting, but there just wasn't enough of that to really keep the film from separating itself from other dystopian movies like this. So the only other thing that I think elevated this for me, because I was sitting like right around the C average range for me, but Marco Beltrami's score is magnificent here. It's really, really gorgeous. It's fantastic. And if you go and listen to it, and I've listened to the whole album, most of the tracks they're just gorgeous, really beautiful. But then there's also a few tracks that, because there is some sort of pseudo action sequences in this movie, he does a really good job of that. It kind of reminded me of his score for World War Z in some areas. A lot of drum use and a lot of more upbeat melodies. But his blend there I thought was really fantastic. I really, really like this score a lot. And so that would elevate it to probably C+, B- for me, just on that alone. So, and the last thing that I'll say is, there's this interesting idea of the Giver, who we've talked about. He carries the memories. He carries all of these feelings and emotions that no one else and the society has. And ultimately, the giver is the giver of hope and love and a brighter future. That's kind of what he represents in this specific story, where everyone else has never really experienced that. Or with Meryl Streep's character, she almost kind of fears that because she kind of knows what that can lead to. She knows that can lead to destruction and other things. But for the giver, he feels like that hope, that love is worth fighting for, and he wants to give that back to the society. So that kind of interesting parallel, I thought, carried the film further than I thought it was going to for me. And again, I didn't know anything about this story or this book or this society going into the film, but I found that metaphor kind of fascinating anyway.
I want to point out an interesting irony just listening to you guys review this, but
yeah, sure.
This movie, okay, you guys didn't comment on this, but in the book, and obviously I think in the movie as well, they call this society as celebrating sameness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very ironic that the movie's themes are kind of against that, yet the movie itself is celebrating sameness to all these other kind of movies that it's tailoring
How
off.
funny.
So it's
Excellent
very,
point.
very hypocritical, I know, and that's disappointing to hear. It really is. As someone like me who is also a fan of the book, which I think the story of The Giver, if it were adapted with the same heart of the novel, you could have a pretty special movie here.
Sure.
It sounds like they just didn't trust the material, and I'm kind of disappointed to hear that.
Just watch Pleasantville again. It's got better stirrings in it. Much better stirrings.
And that's actually a good movie, too. I could watch that again.
There you go. Anyway, we will have a full review of this up on our website, and you can go check that out at InSessionFilm.com.
And if you agree or disagree with these guys' takes here, not mine, because I obviously haven't seen the movie yet, you can let them know by leaving a comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/InSessionFilm, or you can tweet us at InSessionFilm as well. You can also leave us a comment on our Google Plus page or on Letterboxd. Our usernames are InSessionFilm there. Also, you can email us at InSessionFilm@gmail.com.
All right, the InSession Film Top 3 is next, and we'll be discussing our top 3 Robin Williams moments.
Your move, Chief.
We'll discuss them all next. We'll be right back.
The morning after we broke up a month ago, and I grew up. I didn't know I'd be around the morning after. It's always been wait and see, a happy day, and then you pay and feel like shit the morning after. But now I feel changed around, and instead of falling down, I'm standing up the morning after. Situations get fucked up and turned around sooner or later.
Hey guys, it's JD. Just want to pause for a moment to let you know that in the movie The Giver, the character of the giver, it's his job to pass on information to someone else. And that is what I'm going to do right now, because I need to talk to you about another podcast, and it's called the First Time Watchers Podcast. And it's one that I highly, highly recommend. I really like these guys a lot. It's hosted by Tim, Walter, and Hermano. And Hermano's a little bit on a leave right now, but Tim and Walter are holding down the fort really, really well. And you got to check these guys out. They're really great. What's unique about their show is really cool. They pick out a movie that neither of them have seen before. They go and watch it. They come back and review it and discuss it with some really fresh and unique perspectives. They do a really good job of breaking down the film and talking about a lot of certain elements surrounding it. And they're fantastic. I disagree with Tim most of the time, but he's still very good at what they do. They also talk about recent trailers they've seen. They also talk about recent films that they've seen and whether they would recommend them or not. It's a really fun show. It's really good. Again, I highly recommend it. And if you want to find them, there's a couple of ways you can do that. One, go check them out on their website at firsttimewatchers.blogspot.com. You can also hit them up on Twitter at firsttimewatchers. Also search them on Facebook, First Time Watchers. And go to iTunes and subscribe to the show and leave them the most raving review of all time. and let them know that we sent you to them. Again, it's a great show. I highly recommend it. Go follow these guys. It'll be absolutely worth your time. Again, that's first-time watchers.
And instead of falling down, I'm standing up the morning after. Situations get fucked up.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 78. Last week, it was a shock when it was announced that Robin Williams passed away. We're not going to be looking at the why or the how, but rather we're just going to celebrate this incredible actor. This is an actor who made us laugh. He was an actor who made us cry. And he was an actor that made us embrace what we love about the movies. Simply, he's just one of the best actors of our generation. Throughout his career, he won 1 Oscar. He was nominated for Best Lead Actor 3 other times. He won 6 Golden Globes and was nominated a total of 11 times. He won 2 Emmys and was nominated a total of 8 times. And he even won 5 Grammys. He was always fun, he was always entertaining, and he was even always provocative. He made us think about life in new ways, as well as entertain us in a unique way that can only be described as Robin Williams. He was always very funny. Even in his bad films, he brought a lively spark and always stood out. He had such a wide spectrum about his acting that just made him amazing. So that being said, guys, there's so many great things to choose from Robin Williams' career. And I'll toss it to you first, Michael. Did you have any criteria that you looked at to pick your list this week?
Mine was probably just personal experience. When you have a performer that's really in your life for as long as he was so successful for so long. I don't remember a time without Robin Williams.
Sure. Yeah.
So for me, there was a body of work there that as I was growing up to pick from. And so I'm kind of just basing it on my own personal memories and kind of movie experiences with him.
Yeah, I'm kind of going off of that boat a little bit as well. I didn't want to pick a top 3 that was kind of based on what I thought were his top 3 best performances as far as like on a technical level, because I felt like that'd just be too stiff. For a character like Robin Williams, or just for a person like Robin Williams, for how funny he was, for how sentimental he was, as you had mentioned, JD, he was a caring individual, and a lot of his performances and roles that he's played, I think, perfectly embody who Robin Williams really was and what he meant to everyone. And that's what I'm basing my top 3 on. Not just specific moments, but mostly specific roles he's played that I think represent who he was as a person and why we grew to love him so much. Sure. And especially me personally. So it's not going to be what I think are, he won an Oscar for, this movie, which, for example, the character of Sean McGuire in Good Will Hunting. That's an honorable mention for me. I'm just going to come out and say that now. Maybe his technical best performance, sure, but I think there are others that represent everything about what he stood for, and that's what I'm basing mine on.
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty much right in the same boat as you guys. Because I grew up watching him, and because he does cover a wide variety of things, I looked at all of that. I think he's got this amazing ability about himself to not only be hilarious and really funny, but he can quickly change from that to dramatic and emotional and thought-provoking all within the same paragraph. Mm-hmm. I just think he's amazing at really revealing all of that stuff in a lot of his movies. So I looked at 3 moments or 3 scenes that I just really was engaged with on some level, whether it was funny or thought-provoking or whatever the case was. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. Michael, what is your number 3?
Well, my number 3, I don't know if there's a particular moment in this film, but it's mainly the quest that his character's on, and it's from the Fisher King, the character of Perry, who, if you haven't seen it, his wife is killed in a just horrific attack by sort of a gunman who's deranged and despondent, and was encouraged to do so, to just kind of throw his life away by a shock jock, a radio DJ played by Jeff Bridges. And as a younger person, I was sort of a budding film buff and felt like I had discovered this movie. Like, I felt like no one in the world had seen this. Because, like, Robin Williams is funny. Like, I was like, this is, like, it's really horrific at times. It can be really funny. It's very adventurous. There's the fantasy element. The quest for the Holy Grail in New York City, which I just loved as a young kid. I loved the melding of the genres. And I I watched it a few times by myself, and I like got my brother to watch it, and he was like way too young to be watching this. But I was like, you just gotta check this out. And I remember when this is before I even have like a driver's license, like a girl that I had like a crush on, and like her parents dropped her off, and we're gonna like watch a movie, and she was a big Robin Williams fan. And so I was like, I've got the perfect Robin Williams movie for you. It's The Fisher King. And she's like, oh, I've never heard of that. And I was like, you're going to love The Fisher King. She did not love The Fisher King. So I really
can imagine why.
I didn't. As a young man, I didn't understand why anybody couldn't like this movie.
Yeah.
But it was a defining moment as a lover of film for me, because I saw like clearly that there were different tastes in this world, and this girl was not impressed just because it was Robin Williams giving a great performance. She was horrified by it.
Nice.
So I've always had fond memories of The Fisher King, and I love the movie, and I love him in that role. And it's one of the many roles that he played that I can't imagine anyone else playing Perry. I can't imagine anyone else bantering with Jeff Bridges as Jack over their quest for the Holy Grail in New York City. Love that performance, love that role.
Yeah, there's some really great moments in that one.
Yeah. And kind of not surprising that someone could walk away hating it. I mean, it's Terry Gilliam for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but I agree. It is it is quite a fascinating movie, and it's on Netflix too. So if you haven't, those listening, if you haven't seen the movie, definitely go check it out too.
Very good stuff. All right, what do you got, Brendan? Number 3.
My number 3, again, not really specifically a moment, because I feel like a lot of his movies you can have multiple moments that you can talk about with his specific characters that he plays. But my number 3 is the genie from Aladdin. Which I think is going to, I think, a very popular pick amongst fans of Robin Williams. I think we're going to see it pop up on a lot of other people's lists. But for me, I mean, if I had to talk about a specific moment, maybe you could say when Aladdin first rubs the lamp and just the first reveal of this character.
Sure.
And essentially, it really was an important performance from the animated film standpoint, because it really was one of the very first, if not the first time, an animated movie like that really featured a star actor as a voice talent.
It really was.
That really stole the show. And then ever since then, you've seen movies come out multiple times where featuring really well-known, well-respected, and talented actors as voice actors. Before that, Disney and other animated production companies didn't really do that. And so in many ways, Robin Williams kind of changed the game on that. And it's very interesting to hear some of the stories about how the movie was not even technically eligible for the best original screenplay nomination because he ad-libbed so much of the character. Apparently there's like 15 or 16 hours of like voice footage that he did for that movie that didn't even make it.
They said he just made up like half the movie or
apparently,
half of his lines.
Yeah, apparently, kind of similar to what we see like Joe Swanberg.
Literally half of it.
Yeah. I mean, he basically, here's the story direction we're going to go. Here, go, do it.
Go with it.
Yeah, but it's fascinating that he really kind of changed the game for voice acting in animated movies. And it's also kind of an interesting position too that I saw myself in, where seeing that movie, I first realized that a supporting actor in a movie could steal the show. They could take a lot of the reins from the main actors of the story and really, take ownership. And it was the first time I really kind of realized that. I always kind of thought, supporting actor, they're just there to kind of support the lead roles, but sometimes they can take things over. And that was really the first time I kind of started to understand that.
Sure.
And at the same time, at my age, I loved Disney at the time. I love those kind of animated musicals. I love Aladdin as much as probably everyone else here. Part of the great golden age. And, the genie was just a fascinating and fun character. It was the perfect voice casting for Robin Williams, I think.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be insulting about his performance in that, because it's not as much of a performance as it is you're getting to see Robin Williams. Like you're getting to see him do his comedy. And that's just a great like old fashioned like movie star role. Like you're going to see the movie star. And it was, as you pointed out, really cool that you were seeing him animated.
Yeah,
which just freed him up to do so many
whatever
things with
he
the
wanted.
character.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, and that's very, very rarely you see an anime movie kind of write around a certain actor that they want to do the voice of, and they basically that's what I heard they basically did. They wrote the genie's mannerisms and everything around the idea that they wanted Robin Williams to play this role.
And he just embodies it. It's perfect.
It's fascinating. Yeah,
absolutely. It's definitely one of the best animated characters ever.
Yeah,
fantastic stuff,
without a doubt.
All right, for my number 3, I'm going to a film that critics didn't really like very much. A lot of people don't like this movie as much as I do, and I can understand why, but I'm going with the movie Patch Adams, and there's a speech at the end that I want to talk about. And the big reason I'm picking this movie in this specific scene is because it goes back to something that you are mentioning, Brendan, as far as not only was Robin Williams a great actor, but he was just a good guy in general.
Sure.
And you can listen to all kinds of celebrity interviews and things that are out there that's been talked about over the last week of just people just talking about that exactly, just off screen. He was just really genuine, funny, just a really good guy to be around. And obviously he's really talented on screen. And in this specific instance, obviously he's playing this doctor or this guy that's trying to become a doctor. And he's before this board as he's trying to fight for his right to graduate from medical school. And in this moment, he's talking about what it means to be a doctor and what it means to not only prevent death as a doctor, but improve the quality of life, and what it means to treat a person. And when you're treating a person and interacting and engaging with them, regardless of the outcome, you always win. And I feel like that just really personifies what Robin Williams was about. I feel like it's a really emotional scene. It's one that he just really nails and he really goes for, which is amazing. And he just goes on to talk about embracing life, celebrating it. You know, some of those themes we're talking about from The Giver that I really liked is something he's talking about here. He's even talking about how humor is okay even among death, and how you embrace death and how you can go about that healing process really matters. And in this case, he was fighting for a unique and different way. And I loved that. I loved how he was able to do that in this specific moment. I just thought was very poignant and really fantastic. It was really gripping. And I just think it's a perfect representation of what we know of as Robin Williams. So I love it for that reason.
I think that's a beautiful scene too. I'm kind of with the critics on that one a little bit. I don't think it's a great movie. I think it's okay, but there are individual scenes like that in that movie that perfectly embody why we love him so much, and that really is a good scene. There are a lot of great scenes sprinkled in that movie. That I have to give it that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be with Brendan here. I'm not a fan of the film itself, but I am a fan of his performance in that. And
he's great.
You can't imagine anyone but Robin Williams in that role. There's something that he brings to it because it's Robin Williams. There's a warmth to his humor and the emotion of it. So yeah, I would agree in that aspect. It is a sort of an iconic Robin Williams performance.
Yeah, very engaging. At least for me, it was. Sure. All right, what do you got at number 2, Michael?
I'm just kind of going along chronologically for me. I'm going with Mrs. Doubtfire, the 1993 comedy where he plays Daniel Hillard, and it is about his divorce with his wife Miranda and their children and how they're going to function as a family of divorce. My parents got divorced when I was very young, and so I really enjoyed this film as a young person from that aspect, because it is a comedy. You don't see a lot of comedies about divorce. It is appealing to a child because of the drag aspect. You're seeing the Robin Williams, he's an old lady, and he says things that older ladies don't say. But the specific scene in this film that was really like defining to me as like a young person was when he throws the piece of fruit, the lime, I believe, at the back of Pierce Brosnan's head.
Sir, I saw it. It was a run by fruit.
And Pierce Brosnan obviously he's a good-looking leading man. I think he became James Bond after this, and he is the male suitor, the new boyfriend in the children's lives. And so when you're watching Mrs. Doubtfire or Daniel as the main character, you're rooting for him. So you're wanting him to get his family back. And I remember really laughing at that as a kid, just like Brendan, just like what you're saying. It is a funny moment, and I'm rooting for him. And it was actually my dad that sort of was like pointed out, like, yeah, that is funny. But you realize that Daniel's the bad guy here. You realize you're laughing like at the bad guy. You're rooting for the bad guy to win. And I was like, no, he's a great father. He loves his kids, loves his wife. He's like, yeah, that's all true. But in this instance, he is like picking on a good man. Like, this is someone that you would want to be in your children's lives. If there has to be like a step parent, this Stu character, and the movie does a great service to his character, doesn't provide anything bad about him. There's nothing. Usually in these movies, you would see the new boyfriend like is on the phone, like, I hate these kids. I'm going to send them off to military school as soon as I can like marry her. There's none of that. And
it's not like the stepdads in Boyhood. Right?
We'll get to that. This is a far cry from Boyhood situation. And as a product of divorce, and I had step parents on both sides and great loving family on both sides.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that. And as a kid, I did have to step back. I'm like, in this instance, he is behaving irresponsibly.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean he's a bad man. He just, he wants to be around his kids. And I love
Sure.
the ending of Mrs. Doubtfire. I think it's very poignant, and I
It's
think
amazing,
that it
yeah.
appeals to children who are a product of divorce. And it's one that sticks with me, especially the drive-by fruit.
Sure. I could watch that movie any day of the week
Guess
and
yeah.
you'd laugh just as much.
Yeah, so we probably
Love
won't be
it.
seeing a sequel for it now, though.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
because I know they've been working on it. But yeah, that's a great choice too, and there's a lot of great scenes.
There's
in that
so
movie,
many
too.
to choose
There's
from.
so many.
So
If you-
many.
yeah, which is going to be hard for me because, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to say too much because that is also my number 2. Daniel Hillard from Mrs. Doubtfire. And for a lot of the same reasons you were just talking about, Michael, I don't want to reiterate them. One of the things I did want to talk about is just the character itself. Because Robin Williams, he's known for kind of the juxtaposition between his really over-the-top humor and his really dramatic sentimentality, too. And I think this is one of the few characters he plays where he brings both aspects to amped up to 11 in the same movie. Because there are some performances he does in some of his other movies that are either more on the comedic side, maybe some more on the dramatic side. Here he brings both of them in equal weight. Because you've got that, for example, from a comedic side, you got that great scene where he's meeting the scene where he actually comes and meets this character. I think her name's Gloria, the one that has to check on his apartment every now and then.
Sure,
It's that great
yeah.
cross between the Mrs. Doubtfire supposed to be his sister and things like that. But then
Sure.
he does a great montage of voices towards her, and it's so over the top but so funny.
It's
and yet at the
amazing.
same time, he has a great moment like the end of the movie where he's playing Mrs. Doubtfire on the show now, and he's some of the great scenes at the end of the courthouse where he really brings the sentimentality, and he knows how to make both of them blend really well in this movie.
Yeah.
And that's why I have this movie at number 2, because I feel like it, just from that aspect alone of his performance and how he brings both of those characteristics that he's known for at the table in such heavy weight, that you don't see that in a lot of his other movies. It's so heavy-handed on both the drama and the comedy, and it works so well here. And
I think one of my favorite parts about that movie is a throwaway scene, mostly anyway, and it's the first time we meet him, and he's doing the voice thing at the beginning with the
I
cartoons.
love that. Yeah,
It's hilarious.
when the birds are
Amazing
smoking
way
the
to-
cigarette. Yeah.
I love that. There's so many great moments in that movie. It's fantastic stuff. Yeah. Very good stuff. For my number 2, I'm going to a film that's already been mentioned, and it was your number 3, Brendan, and it's Aladdin. What he does with the genie is just amazing for all the reasons you talked about. But it is kind of interesting. You kind of bring up this idea of him and Mrs. Doubtfire, of him being comedic and dramatic. And while there isn't as much of the dramatic side in Aladdin, there is some really fun sentimental moments that he has as the genie.
Toward
which
the
I
end,
think
yeah,
is
there really is, yeah.
fantastic. So he has this amazing ability to just kind of change his pitch and his vocal pattern so quickly, and it's very comedic. It's perfectly timed. It's just hilarious. And, as you talked about, his improvisation, not only in this movie, but in a lot of movies, it's just so rare to find someone who can do it the way that he was able to do it. And as I mentioned, I think the genie is one of the best animated characters of all time. I mean, I love it. I mean, I can watch it anytime and get the same enjoyment out of it every time.
And I was just rewatching it yesterday since he played a double feature of it on Disney, and
nice.
without uncut, without commercials too. Which
nice.
So I had to take my time and do that. But there is some nice dramatic moments in that movie too that I didn't mention when I talked about it at my number 3. Like when Jafar now has command of the genie, and he's forcing now the genie to start making his own wishes, and you can actually see like the pain that he feels when he's talking to Aladdin, saying, I'm sorry, buddy. I have to do this. Jafar is my master now. There's some nice dramatic weight there, and he really does it, like you mentioned, in just the tonality of his voice and how he just he's able to change that without actually seeing his facial expressions. He does it just by voice acting, and that's a rare gift. It really is.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Some really great moments with Aladdin. It's very good stuff. All right, what do you got at number 1, Michael?
I'm going with the easy answer. I'm going to go with Good Will Hunting, his character, Sean McGuire. Kind of for what you were just saying about Aladdin, the swings between the comedy and the drama, and as we talked about with Mrs. Doubtfire, there are a lot of great dramatic moments with this character. This is a drama performance for him. This is you wouldn't say this is any respected comedy. However, the scene that always really touched me is one of the more comedic ones with him, where he is comfortable now with Will, and they're talking about relationships, and he's talking about how he met his wife.
It's amazing,
and
it's so good.
Biggest game in Red Sox history? Yeah, sure. My friends and I had slept out on the sidewalk all night to get tickets.
You got tickets?
Yep. Day of the game, we're sitting in a bar waiting for the game to start, and in walks this girl. It was an amazing game, though. You know, bottom of the 8th, Carbo tied it up. It was 6-6. It went to 12. Bottom of the 12th, in stepped Carlton Fisk. Old Pudge. Steps up to the plate. You know, he's got that weird stance.
Yeah.
And then, boom! He clocks it, you know. High fly ball on the left field line. 35,000 people on their feet, yelling at the ball, but that's not because Fisk, he's waving at the ball like a madman. He's going, get over! Get over! Get over! And then it hits a foul pole. Oh, he goes ape shit, and 35,000 fans, you know, they charge the field, you know?
Yeah, and he's fucking blowing.
Oh, no, he's like, go, get on the... Get away! Bangs it.
I can't believe you had tickets to that fucking game. Yeah. Did you rush the field?
No, I didn't rush the fucking field. I wasn't there. What? No, I was in a bar having a drink with my future wife.
I'm also a Red Sox fan, so that appealed to me. But where he talks about having a ticket to the game where Carlton Fisk, hits the home run and he's waving it against the foul pole.
October 21st, 1975.
And
you know the date to it?
But it's like the movie finally unleashes Robin Williams, and he gets to become that persona just briefly. And you love it as an audience. You're like, okay, he finally gets to be loud. He gets to do his fast talking, and he sells it. He totally sells this romance between this character that you will never meet. You'll never meet his wife. But then they downplay it again. Like he manages to shift gears beautifully as an actor back into a point that he wants to make with this young man about regret and how he would never regret missing that game because of it changed his life totally. Like he found like the love of his life. And that still remains very powerful to me.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
Because it's a total bro scene until that moment. And then it kind of, as an audience member, it kind of hits you like a bucket of cold water. You're like, oh, wow. Yeah, like
it's beautiful,
so I love that moment. That is one of the more comedic moments in the film, but it's the perfect Robin Williams scene for me.
Yeah. Good stuff.
I was just recently reading some trivia on that film, and apparently, like a lot of his comedic moments in a lot of his other films, there was a lot of improv going on here as well. And I heard that the cameraman was laughing so hard on a lot of these scenes that the camera actually shook during a lot of those moments. So now I want to rewatch. The movie and see if there is some shake in the camera. Yeah, but that's it. And it really, like I mentioned, it is going to be an honorable mention for me. It might have been my number 4. But it really is a great performance, and definitely one I'm happy to see him walk away with a statue on for that. If he had to have won one. But yeah, it's a good one. So then for my number 1, kind of going on a little story rant here before I get into it, but one thing I loved about Robin Williams himself was how he just made himself available to bring joy to others when he didn't have to.
Sure.
There's a great story where I think when he was working on, it may have been Mrs. Doubtfire or even Aladdin at the time, where in between his breaks, he would actually call Steven Spielberg on the phone while he was working on Schindler's List, and over the speakerphone, just tell jokes to keep the cast of Schindler's List in a good mood because that movie was so depressing. So he would make his efforts to do things like that. There was also recent news, apparently I would hear that he would go overseas and actually, bring joy to the, those serving in the armed forces.
Sure, yeah.
Which is exactly why I have to put the role of Adrian Cronauer from Good Morning Vietnam on my number 1.
It's amazing.
It really is, and specifically his very first podcast in that movie.
Hey, this is not a test. This is rock and roll. Time to rock it from the Delta to the DMZ. Is that me or does that sound like an Elvis Presley movie? Viva Da Nang. Oh, Viva Da Nang. Da Nang me. Why don't they get a rope and hang me? Hey, is it a little too early for being that loud? Hey, too late. It's 0600. What's the O stand for? Oh, my God, it's early. Speaking of early, how about that Cro-Magnon, Marty Drywitz? Thank you, Marty, for silky smooth sound. Make me sound like Peggy Lee. Freddie and the Dreamers.
The wrong speed. We've got it on the wrong speed. For those of you who are recovering from a hangover, that's going to sound just right.
Let's pull it right back down again. Let's try a little faster, see if that picks it up a little bit. Let's get up on 70. Those pilots are going right now. I really like the music. Oh, still a bad song. Hey, wait a minute. Let's try something. Let's play this backwards and see if it gets any better. Freddy is the devil. Freddy is the devil. Hey, hi, can you help me? What's your name?
And what sells it for me is not only because of the nature of Robin Williams himself being able to just put himself out there when he didn't have to bring joy to others. For those who are going through maybe some moments of torment or war or whatever it might be, and
some situations.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't want to curse because I'm going to bleep down. But I'll let you take
I handle all of it.
Good deal, man.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and I feel like that role now after his passing just makes it that much more pivotal now. And I think what really sells that role or that performance and this specific moment on his first podcast on the radio is watching everyone's reaction, listening to him, how they're just all
amazing,
laughing, all laughing. And this is during the Vietnam War, one of the most heartbreaking and violent and twisted wars we've been in. And the fact that he put himself out there to bring this kind of joy to people who were serving there at this time, and just to hear them laugh and actually be put on good terms and in a good mood, it's just so relevant for who Robin Williams was. And I think it's for me, it's just not my favorite movie he's been in probably, but my favorite character I think he's played now. And I think it's
definitely up there for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe he should have won Best Actor that year. It's pretty close. I mean, I love that he was nominated. It's one of my favorite performances from him.
Absolutely.
I don't care whether you hate the movie or like it. I mean, it's incredible. He's amazing. He's so good.
There are some facts in life, like the sky is blue, grass is green, and Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam is great.
It's amazing. Yeah. Again, a bunch of improvisation there in that one too.
Precisely.
Yeah, very good stuff. For my number one, I'm going with Michael. I'm going with Good Will Hunting. You talked about that wife scene, which is just incredible. And it is so awesome the way that he plays up that moment at the Red Sox Stadium or whatever, the way he builds up the game. And it's funny because Matt Damon's reaction to it is just that. It's like, oh, this is the greatest game of all time. And you love it. And then he brings it back down to reality. It has nothing to do with the game. He's like, I missed it. Yeah, I missed all of that. It's so good. And it's amazing. And I think it really hit Damon's character really hard too. It was this really amazing moment about regret. I completely agree with you about that.
Well, we talked about The Giver earlier, and The Giver's premise is about if we had the ability to transfer wisdom basically to another individual instantly.
There you go.
And that's a scene where that actually happens without any sort of sci-fi superpowers. He puts this idea in his head that changes the perspective of Will. Even though, Matt Damon's got that great line that I don't care if Helen of Troy walked in that bar.
Exactly.
You're going to that
game. Amazing. And I kind of love how it all starts too with Damon's character just poses the question, have you ever thought about what your life would be like if you never met her? And while he does it comedically, his response is essentially no. Like I don't ever want to imagine my life without my wife. And I felt like that definitely hits hard at the end of the scene. It's really amazing. A lot of people will also talk about the bench scene in that movie. It's very iconic. But I'd say also outside of maybe the one that we just referenced, another amazing one is the intimate cathartic moment that they have when he's just basically telling them it's not your fault.
It's not your fault. Look at me, son. It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. I know. No, you don't. It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. All right? It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't f with me. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean. Not you. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
I think there is a lot of deep emotional layers to that moment, and it's the same phrase over and over and over again. And that whole moment, I have to be careful about when I watch this movie because it'll definitely bring me to tears every time. It's amazing.
Such a great scene. It really is.
It's just incredible. And when people think about Robin Williams, it's so easy to think about, I feel like, his comedic side, especially from the early 90s and stuff. But I also feel like this also defines Robin Williams, is that kind of a moment, because he's not only an amazing comedic actor, but he was just as a superb dramatic actor, and that scene definitely proves it. He was amazing.
Well, I think when you're the audience, you need it's a hard sell, the Good Will Hunting movie. Like, it's hard to get, I think, men to go in to see this one. You're going to go see a young man who's violent, like, sort of reform his ways, because he's a math genius, which not many of us are. We don't really dabble in that.
I don't know anything about math.
And you know, he comes from a very hard life that not many have experienced, and then you're going to have a whole film basically about his, like, therapy, basically rehabilitating himself with the help of Robin Williams. And that's where Robin Williams comes in, is we needed someone that was familiar to us, as we all, like, have known him since the 70s. We needed that comforting presence who could make us laugh, and that scene you're talking about could make you cry, because it's Robin Williams sort of leading this young man along.
And at the same time, he's also a person that has his own demons that he's dealing with at the same time, and he's aware of that, and as we all are in dealing with that. But there is something about having those moments and just kind of talking it out with people that goes a long way. And sometimes it might lead to cathartic moments like that, but it matters, and it mattered for Matt Damon's character as well as Robin Williams' character at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much going on, not only in that scene, but really throughout the entire film.
Yeah. And Will ends up
Amazing
stealing
stuff.
his line. Gotta go see about a girl.
Exactly. Amazing stuff. So, I guess it goes without saying, and maybe we could just say everything else, but any other honorable mentions?
Yeah, there's a couple of, like, recent ones. World's Greatest Dad
Amazing.
is one.
That was one I had too. Yes,
that I don't think many people have seen, and I mean, it slipped past me. I think I actually, like, rented it from, like, an old, like, Hollywood Video when those were still around, and that's a very, like, it's darkly comedic, but also, like, has some really great, like, dramatic moments from Robin Williams.
Yeah, I actually watched it earlier this week, and I was going to kind of bring this up in our next segment, but there's so much irony in that movie to the current situation with him that it's really heartbreaking. I went to, like, do, like, a short Letterboxd review for it, and all I could say is I can't say anything right now. There's just too much irony for me to process with this movie.
I mean, yeah, just it being a film about suicide and, like, how the response to suicide would be a very tough watch, you know, right now. That being said, it's a great performance and a great, like, indie film that he did that I think has been passed over.
If I had to pick a moment, it would probably be at the very end when I'll just say he jumps in the pool, you know, without really giving spoilers away. It's incredible. But that's a really good one for sure. Anything else, Michael, that we'd have?
No, I'm kind of, like, flustered actually with his filmography, because I feel like we go get on our phone, but that was one that I sort of had in my mind there that didn't exactly make my top three.
Sure,
but
yeah. Or what about you, Brendan?
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, you guys both put Good Will Hunting at your number one. That was my number 4, so it just missed my list. One that I almost wanted to put on there too was the character of John Keating from Dead Poets Society.
Yeah, that's a big honorable mention for me too. I haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, kind of stealing your thunder there, but yeah,
I so heavily considered the "Oh Captain, My Captain" moment. It's probably my number 4 for me.
It's such an easy pick too, and I mean not that that's a bad thing. It's just it's such a great moment regardless.
It's amazing.
Honestly, I feel like if I would have seen that movie much earlier in life, I probably would have been trying to become a teacher at some point in my life. It's just it's such a splendid character to relate to. Another one I also wanted to put on here that I think is a very underrated film that doesn't get a lot of accolades that I think it really should have, and that's the movie Insomnia. Which I think is a very underrated Christopher Nolan film. You know, Christopher Nolan has made so many great films, a lot of them more popular than others, so this one kind of gets lost in the shuffle. But the character he plays in that, Walter Finch, was really one of the first times I've ever been able to see a kind of a very mildly frightening bad guy. A bad guy kind of used loosely, but you kind of still sympathize with what he's going through. And and that was one of the first times I've ever been able to see a real, I guess, antagonist of a film be portrayed that way. And I thought it was a very fascinating and underrated performance from him too. And it's just a very good crime thriller overall. So those are my honorable mentions for this.
Very nice. Basically, I have everything you guys have already talked about. This is Doubtfire, Dead Poets Society. 1 Hour Photo is another good one.
That's another good one, yeah.
Very good one there. Another one I watched earlier this week that I'd never seen before, What Dreams May Come. There's some really solid moments in that one too.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you guys have seen that one, but
it's on Netflix as well. Yeah, I want to check it out.
Some really good stuff there. I'm not the biggest fan of the Happy Feet movies. They're okay, but his character is by far the best thing happening in either of those films. Which I think is the case really about a lot of the bad movies that he's in.
Sure,
that's the best thing going on in any of those films.
That's true.
Yeah, it's very good stuff.
All right, so those are some of our picks for Robin Williams moments and how much we love this guy. So you can also let us know how your picks stack up against ours. You can email us at InSessionFilm@gmail.com, or you can leave us a comment on our Facebook page or on Twitter or on our website at InSessionFilm.com. So also on that note, speaking of feedback we've been getting and talking about Robin Williams and how great some of the stuff that we took from him.
Sure. Yeah.
We did get some great responses from some folks on Twitter. We might guess it'd be a great idea to kind of see how some of their stuff or their opinions stack up against ours.
Absolutely.
And, just some other great ways to, respect how great of an actor that this guy was. Ross T. Miller tweeted us and said the specific scene he liked was "I Need a Face" from Mrs. Doubtfire, and it says it's got to be right up there.
That's a great scene.
But he said he needs some time to think of the other two because there apparently are so many. But that really is a great. When he sticks his face in that cake, that's quite awesome.
Great stuff. Yeah.
M. Smith Film Blog mentioned the joyous naked run set to Under Pressure at the end of World's Greatest Dad.
Yeah, like I mentioned, that was one of my favorite moments of that entire film. It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's and we talk about it being kind of a dark comedy and kind of that was a nice lighthearted scene there, despite some of the context there too. And that's I can't rewatch that film right now, unfortunately, because of a lot of the ironic reasons. I have to give it some time to let it sink in. I just can't enjoy it as much as I did the first time. But it really is a good movie.
Yeah, it's great.
The Twinkie thing mentioned, surely anything from Aladdin qualifies with a question mark, but yes, of course it qualifies.
Yeah. And it's like you could really do like your top 3 scenes from Aladdin really for him. It's incredible.
You really could, yeah. And kind of going off of that a bit, movie film buff talks about the Friend Like Me song from Aladdin. And also Mrs. Doubtfire throwing the fruit at Bronson's head, just like you were talking about, as well as the whole Good Will Hunting performance.
Absolutely.
Another great one. Last one we have here, Organic Shadow, mentions the bench scene from Good Will Hunting. Phenomenal scene. A lot of great stuff from his other films.
It's iconic for a really good reason.
It really is, too. There's a lot of great... I mean, basically, any interaction that Matt Damon and Robin Williams have together is really
fantastic.
The heart of that movie. And, Organic Shadow also goes on to say that there's a great list of other films, but that's the one that really stood out for that person. So that was a great pick for that one, too. Yeah. But that's what we got so far, and I'm sure that there's a lot of other great feedback out there after this podcast goes live. Feel free to let us know any other ones that you may have, especially if you haven't let us know before.
All right, let's talk about the poll question we had on the website over the last week, where it was kind of a versus question, but you had to be careful about how you read it based off of some of the feedback that we got on Twitter and whatnot, because I asked which actor or actress you prefer, not necessarily the best of those two. So that's the question that I threw out there. And with 55% of the vote, Meryl Streep won the poll. But I wanted to toss it to you guys. I know we sort of talked about this, but which one would you prefer?
I'm just going to go with the test that if I saw like a name like on top of a poster without knowing any other details about the film, I would be more excited to see a Jeff Bridges performance than I would Meryl Streep. She's supremely talented, maybe the best actress of all time. But I think it's just like the movies that he picks just seem to be geared more towards me than hers, because the stuff that she has won Oscars for has not been stuff that I've necessarily been on my top 10 list.
Except for when the two of them picked the same movie together.
I'm blaming her more than I am him. She drug him into it.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, what about you, Brendan?
You're kind of thinking about this more. I know on our last extra film when we brought this up,
we sort of talked about it.
I said Meryl Streep, and to be honest, I still think I'd lean more towards that. I get excited when I see that she's in a movie, especially something that I think is potentially going to be good, because her performances usually always excite me, because they're always so different. They're always so layered in such a way that before I go into it, not knowing anything about it, I know it's going to be something unpredictable. And that's why I think I have to go more towards her. Having said that, though, it also depends on my mood. I love Jeff Bridges for a lot of his other roles, especially he's definitely I guess you could say he's a bit more lighthearted, at least compared to some of his past history, especially if you look at like True Grit and The Big Lebowski. So if I see his name on a movie poster and I'm in the mood for something a bit more on the lighthearted, maybe something on the comedic side, I will have more of a chance or take more of a chance in going for him then. So it depends on my mood, but most part, Meryl Streep would be my answer.
Sure. And I am completely in agreement with you, Michael. 100%. It's really not even that close for me. I prefer Jeff Bridges, and probably for a lot of the reasons you're saying, Brendan, is that he's a little bit more lighthearted. His stuff tends to be a little bit more fun. Although Meryl Streep is amazing, don't get me wrong. I still really like her, and she's great. At the same time, maybe you have to consider the fact that with Jeff Bridges, maybe it's a little bit more riskier in the sense that I would say his bad films are way worse than Meryl Streep's bad films. But at the same time, when it's good or when I like it or when I'm engaged with it, I easily prefer Jeff Bridges. But they're both fantastic. They're very good stuff. And I was thinking about this poll question in one scene during The Giver when it was just the two of them. There was only one moment it happened, but I was like, oh, man, that's got to be my screenshot for the poll next time. So it's good stuff anyway.
Sweet. All right, so let's finish off the show with some movies that we've seen this week. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, just want to pause for a second to say a quick thank you to those that are supporting the show. If you want to help support us, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can just click on the bonus content tab on our main menu, and you can listen to a bunch of bonus content we have there. It is free to listen to, but we do encourage and appreciate a small donation of 99 cents, and all the information is there on our site. You can also sign up to donate per show on patreon.com. If you go to InSessionFilm.com/donate, you'll see a bunch of information there of how you can do that. But there's a bunch of free gifts for signing up if you go ahead and do that. And we're also sponsored by Audible.com. If you just go to audibletrial.com/InSessionFilm, you can sign up for a free audiobook and a free 30-day trial. And so you can go and check out the vast array of books that they have, all kinds of good stuff. And it directly helps support this show. So we really, really appreciate everyone that's doing that. No matter how you support us, we can't thank you enough. It certainly goes a long way. So again, thank you very much.
I swam across, I jumped across.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan. And we are Talking in Circles.
Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as Geekcast Radio's newest edition. And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions. We are simply three friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 78. And now we're going to talk about the movies we got to see over the last week. Kick it off, Michael, in theater 7 times. What'd you get to see this week?
Oh, God. Well, I watched Let's Be Cops, which
Oh boy,
I've already.
I love Jake Johnson, so
I've already forgotten the jokes if there were any. I think the trailer.
That's a shame because I still think the premise itself is hilarious.
Okay, the trailer is probably the funniest thing. You just need basically you need a shot. You don't need a full glass of Let's Be Cops.
It very much feels just like an extension of New Girl. If you've ever seen that show,
yeah. I think the issue I have with it is that the two characters in the trailer, at least, are kind of both portrayed as like idiots. Like you're in for like a Seth Rogen, James Franco type comedy.
Sure.
And it's really just Jake Johnson and Wayans Jr. is totally the straight man. Like he's the one that's always, we really shouldn't be doing this. And when you're talking about like a 80, 90-minute movie, you kind of get tired of the guy that's like, yes, I know you shouldn't be doing this, so why are you doing this? Like, please stop. So it kind of feels like one of the characters in this buddy cop comedy is nagging the audience the entire time. So I didn't find it funny. The guy I was with, he thought it was funny, but there's no accounting for taste.
See, I will see it because I love Jake Johnson. He's like one of my man crushes.
You will enjoy that aspect. He's fine, perfectly fine, but he gets all the best material.
Sure.
Expendables 3, totally boring.
So I heard in that movie that the actual those movies are built on the gimmick of these old guys kicking ass. Okay, from what I heard in this movie, that all those old guys are actually literally expendable in this one. That Sylvester Stallone basically says like, "Screw you guys, I'm going to find a young crew."
Well, that's always been my problem with the film series. Now, this was way more a glaring issue because yes, it's like the entire team is like, okay, you can go away now. We're gonna like get some young studs in here to do all this. But you're right. That totally goes against the premise of seeing old 80s action stars.
And that's what people like the series for, right?
Yeah.
Right.
At least what the target audience for it is.
This one's also PG-13, so
which is ridiculous.
It's less violent than the other two, and also the 80s action films that it's supposed to be like a callback to.
Yeah.
It's boring. The best part is Kelsey Grammer, which is like shocking.
Why is he even in this movie?
I felt the same way. Like when the trailer came on and they're listing off all these action stars, and then it's like Grammer. I had no idea why Fraser Crane is now an expendable, but he actually is. He's like the best part of the movie.
You missed a bunch of episodes where he went around town kicking ass.
Well, hopefully they're on Netflix.
He must have did that on Frasier. I don't know.
That must have been like season 6 or something.
Yeah.
I did get to see Boyhood, which is a staggering film achievement. It's amazing. Don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
Yeah,
I mean, you
incredible.
By this point, if you're listening to this podcast, you've heard the accolades for it. I also watched 100-Foot Journey, which
I'm kind of interested in this one. Tell me.
If you're like into it for like the foodie aspect of it, it pales in comparison to Chef, which came out earlier this summer.
Sure.
And that's one complaint I had about it. It's a perfectly fine film and what it's going for, and the plot and the story and the characters are fine. Helen Mirren is,
pretty to the book, you think?
I would have no idea on that regard, but I just know that if you're wanting close-up shots of like, food that's going to want to make you go out and eat, they didn't really go for it as much. They didn't go for the
Chef
money.
Did that really well.
Chef, yes. Chef had the old money shots, as Burt Reynolds would say from Boogie Nights. Like that.
Jeez.
That's what they were going for.
Just thinking about it now is making me starving.
And then another one I saw was I Origins, which is from the director of Another Earth, I believe.
Yeah.
Didn't really care for that. It would have been a perfectly fine like Twilight Zone episode, but it's kind of extended out.
Yeah, I've seen it hasn't gotten great reviews.
It kind of overstays its welcome. I would say the premise and the ending are cool, kind of like a Twilight Zone episode, but not for 80 to 90 minutes. So those are some of the things I watched this week. I watched a lot, so that's just a handful.
Well, 2 weeks ago, I watched 11 movies during the week, and it was a lengthy segment. This segment got a little long. So,
yeah, I'm saving you all some of the other complaints I had.
I mean, you can just list them off if you want. You know,
I saw Get On Up, which
I plan on watching that this week. I heard the performances are at least pretty decent, or at least Chadwick Boseman's pretty decent.
I guess. I always have an issue with these films where it just seems like we're supposed to be impressed with someone doing a great impression of like an iconic figure, because you can get that on SNL, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the movie is good, because he is perfectly fine doing his version of James Brown, but the movie is beat by beat every other biographical musician picture you've ever seen before.
That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah. Biopics are really tricky to pull off.
Yeah.
Like you really have. I feel like a lot of them are just unfocused, and because especially when you span a long or a lot of time, and I haven't seen the film, so I don't know. I just feel like a lot of that can get so muddled real fast.
I mean, I've got a quick fix for them, which is just to stop. Please stop making these movies. Please stop making these pictures because they're not very good. And if you've seen one, you've usually seen them all. So
are you talking about biopics in general or just music biopics?
Music biopics in particular, because it seems like we're on a run of those. I think with a biopic that doesn't feel a need to have performances, they can kind of branch out a little bit more.
Sure.
Although I did see we're getting a Jimi Hendrix one with
Andre 3000,
but apparently they couldn't get the film rights to any of his music.
Yeah. That's weird.
So I have no idea
how's that going to work.
We're also going to be getting one of Freddie Mercury, which I am dreading.
I'm dreading all of them.
Well, Queen's my favorite band, so and as far as a musician and singer myself, Freddie Mercury is one of my icons. So I'm not looking forward to that just on its own.
All right, so music biopics, not a fan over here with these two. So there you go.
Well, I saw one that I thought was pretty good, and that was when Val Kilmer played Jim Morrison in The Doors, because that was actually really hard to watch. That got no, it was hard to watch in a very gritty and depressing way, but it got the tone right, and it was one of the few times I've seen a music biopic that I actually thought that took a risk. Let's just say the rest of them I do think play it safe, and they focus on the life of the music and things like that. They don't really get to what these people actually went through. They don't take enough risks.
Yeah, because a lot of these people, they go through some really arduous things, or they do some really terrible stuff, and they get into things that people tend to frown upon, and a lot of the time Hollywood is afraid to go to that territory.
Yeah.
And not really just with music biopics, but anyone that has dealt with that stuff. I mean, it's, the families want these movies to be portrayed a certain way or whatever. That's why people have been wanting to do a Martin Luther King biopic for the longest time, but the family's like, nope, we're not dealing with that thing or this thing or that thing. And I mean, the guy wasn't, the holiest of persons all the time. So it's hard to really go to those territories because of politics, and that ultimately ends up hurting a lot of these films.
I think if you're talking just musically, music specifically, the best ones are concert films. That's where you really get what the performer was. And one I watched a few months ago on LCD Sound System, Shut Up and Play the Hits, is a concert film, which it's intermixed with him the day after their final concert, their final performance. And it's like him walking his dog and picking up the newspapers and recycling. And I was like, this is amazing. This is what I want to see. And it's him giving yet another interview, trying to pontificate on what his career was about, intermixed with oh yeah, I need to return that DVD I borrowed. I just thought we never are going to see that in a feature length film, so I would just stick with that.
Yeah. Well, that's visceral, and that's when it gets to the real heart of the matter of who these people were. But I mean, it's not a movie though. It's not a it doesn't tell a biographical story. It's an actual interview process. It's a concert film. It's real. But that apparently doesn't sell these days.
I think a lot of the time they just work better as documentaries.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the one thing I'm concerned about Angelina Jolie's movie coming out in the fall, Unbroken. I mean, the guy's story is amazing. I don't know if it'll work on film, but it would be one hell of a documentary. I'll tell you that much.
I'm mostly interested because the Coen brothers wrote it.
Sure.
So,
So, I mean, they're just really tricky to do in general. I would say one of the better ones I've seen recently is a documentary, and that's Mistaken for Strangers. I mean, it's less about the music and more about, other stuff that's going on. But if you like the band The National, I would definitely check it out. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out.
All right. What'd you get to see this week, Brendan?
So I didn't go to the theater nearly as much as you, Michael. In fact, technically, I really only went twice, maybe not even. But we did see a Most Wanted Man this week. We had a great discussion on our Extra Film podcast, our last one on that one. Yeah. I did watch Boyhood. I want to actually go see it again, and then we can hopefully have a great discussion about that one for our next Extra Film. And I'm looking forward to a second viewing on that one. I really think it's going to be well warranted.
It's worth it. It's totally worth it. There's so much going on.
Not surprised, and that's what I'm most looking forward to more than anything else. And even my first initial viewing of it, it's been growing on me since then too. So I just can't imagine what a second viewing is going to do for me. Most of what I watched this week was as I mentioned, I had a lot of dates with Netflix this weekend, and she's a lovely lady.
She is. Very convenient sometimes.
But there,
there for you.
I was there for you. Yeah.
In our talks about Robin Williams, there's a lot of great Robin Williams films on there now, and I did rewatch Steven Spielberg's Hook.
Oh, me too. How fun! Let's talk about it.
Which I do think is a good movie. I think it is slightly flawed.
Marco's over there shaking his head. It's not my favorite Spielberg film or my favorite Williams film. It's fun and it's quirky. It has its moments. The food fight I thought was pretty fun.
I love the scenes with the Lost Boys. I think the big problem with it is really like the first third of the movie. I think has a bad time setting up the story, and I think it is kind of confusing sometimes. But when we actually get to Neverland, it starts picking up again. Although I do think this is one of the few films where I think Robin Williams was slightly overshadowed in parts. I think Dustin Hoffman stole a lot of the scenes that he was in. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying because normally we know Robin Williams for stealing everyone's thunder and everything he's in.
It's just kind of weird seeing him like do fight scenes and stuff.
Yeah, and he does them fairly well. It is interesting.
It's kind of weird. Yeah.
I don't mind the movie. I think Hook is one of those movies that I think worked really well on paper because it is a neat story about what if Peter Pan really did grow up and live in our world and then forgot who he was. How do we bring him back into who he was before? I think it is a fascinating story. I think the execution was a little questionable in parts.
Sure.
But for the most part, maybe it's a personal thing because I used to love it as a kid. I've only watching it again recently. I noticed that it is a flawed movie, but I still enjoy it mostly.
It's one of those, much like The Giver, to me, that has interesting themes that I enjoy. Just the execution of it isn't all quite there. But I do love the idea of what you're talking about, of him wanting to be a dad and him leaving for whatever reasons, and the whole idea of celebrating life and how does that look in the middle of this story or whatever. But again, it was some of the execution wasn't there.
Precisely.
Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell is just some sort of film atrocity that
Yeah,
I don't think I'll ever get over.
I think when you just say that out loud, it's more entertaining when you just say the words Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell than actually seeing her as Tinkerbell.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
But I did get to rewatch that, and I did rewatch The Fisher King as well. It's also on Netflix. I was hoping to watch The Birdcage, which is also on there now.
I haven't got to see that one yet.
I haven't seen it in a while, and it only didn't make my list with Robin Williams because he was kind of overshadowed by Nathan Lane, who was so over the top in the movie, in kind of a good way. He's actually pretty funny. But I started watching it. I didn't get a chance to finish through it. And then also rewatched Aladdin because Disney Channel was playing it uncut as a double feature. Another great defining moment in the Disney vault of their rebirth of Golden Age that really started with The Little Mermaid, with Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, then The Lion King, and then even some of their mid-90s works that started deviating down a bit. I still think a lot of them were still what worth seeing, and it was a great Golden Age for Disney too.
Yeah. The crab, Sebastian makes a cameo in Aladdin.
Yeah.
Did you remember that?
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, I actually just saw that yesterday when I was watching it. I was like, wait, that's
forgot
Sebastian.
about that. Yeah.
And also, I guess it was the merchant that actually narrates the beginning of the movie is also voiced by Robin Williams.
Oh, interesting.
Because it was meant to be the genie, and he voiced it, and then I guess that got cut. They decided to create a new character out of it, but they still kept Robin Williams' voice for it.
Interesting.
And I was just reading the trivia on it, and almost all the trivia stuff on IMDb for Aladdin is all about Robin Williams.
Sure. Of course it is.
Yeah,
and deservedly
but
so.
rightfully so, yeah. Other things I did get to watch, did rewatch the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the extended editions, because I finally got the whole package on Blu-ray, so I wanted to get a chance to rewatch those.
Because 9 hours isn't enough.
It's more like 12 hours, man. Yeah, but it's totally worth it. It's such a great story that tells. And our talks about Marvel, wanted to rewatch The Avengers because that's still on Netflix as well. Another great film, great entertaining film. Yeah. FX has been repeatedly playing the first How to Train Your Dragon, so I rewatched that.
I watched the kind of second half of it earlier today, I guess.
Yeah, and it's still a great animated film, and I only like that movie more and more as I watch that one, and the fact that I love the second one so much better. And I can't wait to see the second one again. I think once we get a third one there, I really think we have a great animated trilogy coming out of here. Something I did watch that was new. This is an old foreign film. I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of the filmmaker Andrei Tarkovsky, who has done films like Solaris and Stalker. Some fairly well-known films. But his very first major film he did was a film from 1962, a black and white war film called Ivan's Childhood. And it was a very low key film, basically about a child who's now basically left homeless due to the World War II, or I think it's World War II that Russia got involved with, and he basically acts as a spy for the Russian army because he's so easily unseen in a lot of these scenes, and they're using him as a spy. And it's in my opinion, it may very well end up being the greatest war film I have ever seen.
Interesting.
Because it really gets to the heart of the matter about how children are affected by war. And if you really, it's on the Criterion Collection. And in fact, if anyone here has Hulu Plus, you could probably find it on there and watch it there. I'm pretty sure it's there too. But it's a fascinating film. There's a beautiful scene where he interacts with this old man who just lost his home from some kind of bombing, and he's basically just standing around the remains, still hanging up pictures of his family, and it's heartbreaking.
Interesting.
And for a filmmaker to capture that not only in his first film, but for something in the early '60s like that, and get that kind of visceral feeling from war and how it affects children specifically, it was beautiful. And if you want to seek out something a little obscure and old in a different language, Ivan's Childhood, please check it out. It's a beautiful film.
I'll put it on the list. That sounds really interesting. Yeah.
That's it. That's all she wrote.
Very nice. Very good stuff. Well, as mentioned, I also got to see Boyhood twice, and I'm going to save my thoughts for that for our extra film that we're going to do this week. But like you said, Michael, it's one of the richest experiences you'll have all year. It's just superb. Rewatch took, as we were just talking about. As Brennan mentioned, I also watched Most Wanted Man, and you can hear the three of us talk about that on our latest extra film segment, and that was a lot of fun. I also watched Good Will Hunting, and we kind of mentioned that in the top three, so I won't talk about it much there. I also rewatched The Fisher King, but one movie that I haven't seen before, this was a first-time watch for me. It was a film that you mentioned earlier, Michael. It was World's Greatest Dad. And I know I kind of mentioned this already, but there was a lot of sad ironies about this movie. I'm just going to kind of go ahead and throw out a slight spoiler here about this film. But in the movie, his son dies of asphyxiation. So there is that parallel. And another thing that's kind of interesting about the movie, and perhaps it's something that is going to be a little bit familiar to some people, is it's this whole idea of looking back on someone's life after a tragic accident like this, which a lot of us have gone through. I mean, we did it with our top three. A lot of other podcasts and shows have done the same thing. There's a lot of websites that have written about Robin Williams over the last week or so. And in the film, that's what happens with his son is the school kind of looks back at this kid's life, and a lot of the kids have a lot of positive things to say about his son. They wanted to name the library after his son. And so there's this kind of elevated, almost kind of cult status that is kind of cast upon people after situations like this. And that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. I'm just saying it's kind of interesting and kind of parallels the real life situation a little bit. And one of the most heartbreaking things about this film, too, is that at one point during the movie, Robin Williams' character goes on this TV show. And he's kind of talking about his son and some of the elements going on with that. And at one point, he looks directly into the camera and he talks about suicide prevention and how important it is to go out and to talk to people and express those feelings if you're having those kinds of thoughts, as he's looking directly into the camera. And I had to pause the movie. I had to pause it and kind of gather myself when that happened. It was kind of this weird, like, out of body experience. I was just like, man, it was almost too much for me to get through. And not that the film is necessarily that arduous. I just think a lot of the situation over the last week just kind of, it was just crazy how ironic it was.
Yeah,
to
it's
me.
way too ironic. And
it's a difficult subject matter. Even when I watched it when it first
it is.
video.
I mean, it's a dark thing anyway. Yeah.
And it is a dark comedy at times, but it's definitely more difficult now. It's not one that I would probably recommend people watching right now in the moment.
Yeah.
But that is something. Robin Williams, he touched on a lot of tough subjects, and suicide
really
was
did.
one of them.
Yeah.
I'm sure you all have heard the Mark Maron podcast he did, or if you haven't, you should check it out. The interview, and Maron actually reposted it. And it was an episode from 2010, and he talks about thoughts of suicide on that one. And that they kind of preface the show like, this is going to be over some difficult conversation and subject matter, but it's really important. And you really do get to see like a side that probably his friends saw, his fellow comedians.
Sure.
He's funny. He's sad, like it's very touching at times. I would check that out, and if you can deal with it, I would check out World's Greatest Dad. But just go in knowing that suicide is the main kind of focus of the film,
and it's it is dark. It is one of those movies. It's definitely worth watching. I think it's a good movie, but especially when you cast all of this irony on top of it, it was a little overwhelming there for a second. But it's a really good film. It's one that's really well done. Robin Williams, his acting in it is phenomenal. And there's some really deep layered stuff that's going on there. But with everything that's kind of going on right now, that irony to me is a bit heavy, but it's definitely one I would still recommend. Definitely go watch it. It's really good. I also watched, moving on to a completely different matter, I watched Into the Storm. Which
is that a double feature with Boyhood? Did you just walk into the Storm?
No. This was something we saw separately. The wife wanted to go see this because she loves storm disaster movies for whatever reason. And I'll say this is one of the worst movies of the year so far. It is really bad.
Thorin's in it. That's all I really know about it. But
the funny thing is, I listened to this interview. I don't know if this is true or not, but I listened to this interview where these guys were saying that the director of this movie wanted this film to be what Gravity was for space movies, this for like storm movies. And
so he's basically an idiot.
Yeah, basically.
Just a very confident individual.
I guess so.
And look at his past history of what he's directed before. Before this, Final Destination 5.
This movie is an atrocity. It is really terrible. And I guess maybe, he's definitely expecting people to walk in and just have fun with it. But the characters aren't set up very well. And it's shot very much like handheld camera style, where that's kind of the focal point of the cinematography, which is kind of crazy to me because there's some situations where people are trapped in certain areas and they can't get out, but they take time to set up the camera. Because why would you do that?
Because without that, you wouldn't have a movie.
Just stop doing it. Throw that in the heap with the bio music picks too. Just please stop.
I mean, it's crazy, and there's tornadoes just landing everywhere. And the thing is, I'm okay if you want to do a movie about the biggest tornado of our time, or like 6 different tornadoes at the same time.
I'm not.
Whatever. But when they're right next to one another, and the people are literally feet from it without it affecting them, is crazy to me. I mean, there's one tornado that catches on fire. I'll just say that. It catches on fire. I'll say that again. The tornado caught on fire.
Can you say it one more time? I think I have wax in my ears.
Caught on fire. I don't even know how that's physically possible.
Can you bleep me out here? What the
So the tornado's on fire, and the people are... There's a shot that's from high above. You see the thing catch on fire, and they're literally maybe 100 feet from their tornado. And really from several of them, honestly. And it only affects one person. Like, you would think that it would be blowing half that neighborhood apart, but no, just the small little parking lot that it's in.
See, you improve these movies by just basking in the stupidity. So if you're gonna have the fire tornado, have a dude walk up and punch it and kill the tornado.
Yeah. Just go full bore.
So what you're telling me is that something like Sharknado has more scientific soundness to it than this does.
Yeah, probably, more entertaining, I'd assume.
Probably. I haven't seen the Sharknado movies, but from the sound of it and from people liking it, I can only imagine that it understands and knows the premise and just really goes for it.
Right.
Where this tries to take itself way too serious.
The gravity of tornado.
The gravity of tornado movies. Just ridiculous.
I guess the director here, I think it was like Stephen Quayle or something like that. He's no Alfonso Cuarón. We can tell him that right now.
Yeah, no kidding. It was absurd. I know that it probably wasn't trying to be, I don't know. If you're trying to be the gravity of anything, and then you pull out this it.
Like
I can't take it serious.
Can we rename this movie Fire Tornado?
Maybe.
That's
it
what
probably would have got more
this.
people.
That's what if I go to see this movie now, I'm going to tell the clerk, can I have one ticket for Fire Tornado?
Yeah, definitely do it. Anyway, it's pretty bad. I'll say, though, there are a couple of shots near the end of the film visually that's amazing. So like the one from the trailer where the airport is going crazy and you see planes in the air, that was actually really awesome. That was as cool as the trailer made it out to be.
Okay.
But there are very, very few moments like that. I mean, it definitely doesn't save the movie by any sort of means. So it's bad. Definitely don't go watch this movie.
And I did not. I saw like everything else. But
I kind of want to see a Fire Tornado, and then I'll just get up and leave.
Yeah. But I guess finally to kind of bring it back to Robin Williams, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I also did watch What Dreams May Come. And this is another poignant, arduous film from Robin Williams that is about celebrating life and kind of remembering what's good. But the whole premise of this film is that he's dead and he's kind of in heaven, and kind of what leads up to some other elements later on in the film, again, that has to deal with suicide. So it's just kind of this interesting premise that is more kind of a metaphor for not giving up and kind of embracing life and embracing the hard aspects as well as the love aspects, which I feel like has been a theme throughout this entire show. So I liked it. I thought it was pretty interesting. It wasn't like, again, not my favorite or the best Robin Williams movie I've ever seen, but I think what's interesting, though, about it is the kind of creativity and imagination that is within the world in that movie. I think is what's so great about movies in general, or about what's going to the movies, is it's about having these visions and imaginations and then kind of portraying that. I think is fun, and I think that's an environment where they did a really good job of that. And again, Robin Williams is really, really fantastic in that movie.
It's a visually kind of stunning film.
It is,
its own unique style.
It has like a kind of like a painting canvas kind of look to it. I think they use that as like inspiration for a lot of the cinematography. And Cuba Gooding Jr. He's also really good in it too.
Yeah. There's one line toward the end of the film that I think really defined it in a really great way. And I think that this is a theme that I've talked about on our show a lot, and it's one I feel like I could spend hours talking about. But there's a line that Robin Williams says to his wife near the end of the film. He says, good people end up in hell because they can't forgive themselves. And I think in that moment it was more of a metaphorical thing than a literal thing, but that whole idea that if you are unable to forgive yourselves, you're going to live a life that you don't want to live. And it is portrayed in that movie and really in a couple of other movies that he's in. And I just thought that was really fascinating, really good stuff there. But anyway, that is all I got to see this week. Michael, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So you have a really awesome podcast. Tell us about it, and where can people find it on the internet?
I wouldn't call it pretty awesome. It's pretty adequate. It is a podcast, and we do talk about movies. It's called War Machine versus War Horse. We're inspired by a new movie, and through that, we talk about two older films that sort of have a similar theme, director, premise, something like that, and we pit them against each other. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can follow us on Twitter at War Machine Horse.
Yeah, definitely go follow them. Go subscribe to them. Subscribe to them on iTunes. Leave them a review. Promise, it's good stuff. Michael might like to be a little bit downplaying his podcast, but it's good stuff. Go check it out. And that should do it for this week's show. Be sure to go and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/InSessionFilm. Hit us up on Twitter at InSession Film, and you can also find us on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search InSession Film. And sign up for our monthly newsletter. You can do that on Facebook by clicking the newsletter tab or on our site at InSessionFilm.com/newsletter.
And also, all of our reviews are up on our website as well as Letterboxd, so you can check this out there at letterboxd.com/InSessionFilm. We try to respond to every piece of email that we get. Sometimes it's hard, but we try our best to do that. So you can also email us at InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Also, you can subscribe to us on iTunes and on Stitcher, and while you're also on iTunes, you can leave us a comment or a review there. We appreciate some of those feedbacks on that other site as well. Also, you can check out our Listen Now page on our website at InSessionFilm.com/listen-now.
And the InSession Film Podcast is supported by our awesome listeners like you. Once again, if you want to help us, just go to our website at InSessionFilm.com and click on our bonus content tab in our main menu to hear our bonus content for just a small donation of 99 cents, or you can just go to InSessionFilm.com/donate and you'll see a bunch of information there on how you can help us. And you can hear everything we do, whether it's our main shows, our extra film shows, and our bonus content. You can hear all of that on our mobile app for just a one-time fee of $1.99. And you can find that app on the Amazon Market for Android devices, the Windows 8 phone store for Windows devices, and the Podcast Box app for iOS devices. And all those details are on the site at InSessionFilm.com/apps. And that will do it. Michael, thanks for being here once again, man. Before we get out of here, any final thoughts on anything?
Aside from Fire Tornado.
Besides from Fire Tornado.
Yeah, I really was going to go see Boyhood for a second time, but I think you sold me on Into the Storm with this Fire Tornado. Would that be a wrong decision?
Yes, it'd be a waste of time.
Would it be as wrong of a decision to see The Giver?
I would still see Boyhood as many times as possible.
I'm talking about Into the Storm comparing to The
Or go
Giver.
see Guardians for a third or fourth trip down.
I'll probably still see The Giver
because I think
regardless.
that's what I'm doing tonight. Guardians again.
Guardians again, which I've seen again, but I haven't seen it in 3D this time yet, though.
I haven't seen it in 3D either. I kind of prefer the 2D anymore.
Yeah, I do
so.
too.
I saw it in 3D and 2D, and I like the 2D better.
2D?
The colors pop more. I like
Interesting.
vibrant colors.
Yeah, that sells me enough on that already. Other final thoughts, rest in peace, Robin Williams.
Yes,
God love you. Made us laugh, made us cry. One of the greatest actors of our generation. We grew up with him. So
yes.
All of our listeners out there, definitely take the time to tribute him. Find any movie of his and just start rewatching how great he was.
Yeah.
I mean, let's celebrate him.
Yeah, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on your favorite Robin Williams moments, as we talked about earlier. There's such a variety out there. It's a lot of great stuff. So
I want to know if anyone else was stupid enough to have their middle school crush watch The Fisher King with them. And if you're out there, get in contact with me. We have stuff in common. So check out The Fisher
Something
King.
tells me you might be the only one.
Yeah, for sure.
That's fine with me too.
But who knows? You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
Next week on the show, we're going to be reviewing Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. So be on the lookout for that. That should be fun. Also, be on the lookout for our extra film this week, where we are for sure 100%, 150% talking about Boyhood. Finally. So
I hope so. You all could have seen it a collective 50 times by the time this extra film comes out.
Well, and the fact that we've mentioned it on every single extra film that we've ended.
because we never knew when we were going to get it. We were hoping, and we're like, if we get it, we're going to do it. If we get it, we're going to do it. And then we had to wait for forever.
Essentially, what we were doing was what Jimmy Kimmel would always do and say, well, unfortunately for Matt Damon, we ran out of time. That's exactly what we were doing with Boyhood.
My first text when I found out we were getting Boyhood was to you, JD. I was like, Boyhood is coming this weekend.
Finally.
Yeah.
It is here.
So I definitely look forward to that. But yeah, I'll just echo Brendan's sentiments. R.I.P. Robin Williams. You would definitely be missed. But thanks for all your work you've ever done. You entertain us like no other. So thank you for that. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll see you guys next time on the InSession Film Podcast. For the entire version of our podcast, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or on Stitcher, or check us out online at InSessionFilm.com.